friends with Dorothy, fighting for your civil rights. Out on the cruel streets tonight. For Sylvia and Marcia, life was harder than you'll ever know. Sylvie placed a star where others just threw a stone. Ignited, 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 yeah.
We're delighted to welcome a new guest to the programme, Chris Kelly, the playwright Chris Kelly. So, Chris, welcome to LGBTQ+life.
Thank you for having me, Mick.
Yeah, Chris, you've got a play that's it's having its initial release on the 1st of November. But if we could step back just a little bit, you're the author of this play. Is this your first venture into playwriting, or are you a seasoned playwright?
This is my first play as an adult. There's a few plays floating around from when I was 14, 15, but I wouldn't go looking for them if I were you.
Sure. And is this what we would call one of those burgeoning desires that you knew you had this work in you, and you've now finally not only got it down on paper, but you very shortly will have it on the screen, on the stage in front of an audience?
No, I would say this play, it had been developing in my mind for quite a while. It was an idea that was sort of growing, and I felt like I had to sort of exercise it. So so I wrote it.
Sure, yeah. Have you always wanted to be a playwright, or were there other aspects of the arts that you perhaps had dabbled in before you settled on this?
I've always wanted to work in theatre. Specifically, I love the pageantry of it, the lights and that, but I love as well the immediacy and the connection that you have with the audience in the theatre. I like that they're right in front of you and you get to sort of play with them. In terms of other aspects of the arts, there was a while where I thought I'd love to be a singer, so I did a degree in singing with formerly DIT, now TUD, and I've done a chunk of work in opera as well, directing operas as well.
Okay, yeah, you very much, for those who are on radio, I have to tell people, Chris has a very Dave Gahan quality. You could certainly win a Dave Gahan look-alike contest. You know, Dave, the personal Jesus is Dave.
Yeah.
You could easily win a Dave look-alike contest. You must be delighted now that certain COVID restrictions are being lifted. I mean, it's been it's 18 months or thereabouts. It's a year and a half, a very long stretch, chunk out of an artist's life.
It's been absolutely huge in so many ways, because so much of my work stopped overnight in March 2020. But as well as that, I was someone who was going to the theatre 2, 3, 4 times a week. Like, I went to see everything that was going. And that stopped as well. Like, so much of the learning that you would have been doing stopped. So much of your social life stopped. It was really, really, it was a huge upheaval for anyone in the arts.
And that's just on the creative side. What about the economic side? Because I know some people who've had to take jobs completely out of their field, couriers particularly. Others have given it up completely. Did you ever reach those levels of despair, or were you flexible enough to be able to continue in the arts, but at the same time pay the bills?
I was very fortunate that I was already teaching piano and singing. Anyway, so that was able to continue, and I was able to just do more of it. I got a load more students, and it moved on to Zoom, obviously, but I was able to keep going and sustain myself, and it was nice that I still felt like I was doing something creative. Yeah.
Were you able to do that in a live environment, or did you have to do it like this over Zoom?
It was over Zoom. Now, a lot of it sort of came in and out of in-person lessons for a while. Like when schools reopened in September of 2020, we were back in person for a while, but then in October we moved back onto Zoom. So it's been on and off, and now it's a real mixture. There's some people who don't quite feel comfortable coming back to face lessons yet, so they're still on Zoom. But then a lot of the students, especially ones that are getting ready for exams and things like that, they're back doing in-person lessons.
Sure. I'm guessing it must be quite difficult with something where sound is central to it, because we know from radio, Zoom, it's got a lot of advantages, but its audio leaves a great deal to be desired at times. How does that work out when you're, say, perhaps teaching music or even singing?
It's really, really hard, especially with singing. I mean, like with piano or violin or something, you can see what's happening, but with singing, so much of what's happening is happening inside of you, and as a teacher, you're really relying on the detail in the sound to be able to sort of diagnose what's going on. So when that's missing, it's hard. It's been a big learning curve for, I think, everyone that's teaching music.
Yeah. So you weren't tempted to take your art onto, like other people I know who are writers, that they suddenly took to producing, say, podcasts or radio plays or things like that. Did you go down that avenue at all, or was that not a possibility?
No. First, I don't think I have anything to make a podcast about. I can't imagine who would listen to me. But in terms of, like, I know a lot of the bigger companies and a lot of smaller companies as well started like recording shows and doing them online, and I watched a lot of them. I think it's wonderful that people were able to go on making work through the pandemic and that. But for me, watching them, I mean, you miss the connection that you get in person in the theatre. If you're watching a play online, it's like watching a film, which is just a different art form. So it's not something that hugely appealed to me. I did do one Christmas concert, which was recorded, of like carols and stuff. But that was it. That was the extent of my foray into that.
Yeah. From a personal perspective, David, Chris, it's, for somebody like me, whose social life doesn't necessarily revolve around going into town or going to what we would call entertainment venues, living a life under your own roof hasn't been a major trial and tribulation over the last 18 months. In fact, I've quite liked it in one regard. But for somebody like yourself, who is a young person and who social life is an important part of that, how has that affected you on a personal level?
It really, the biggest upheaval for me has been not being able to go to the theatre. The rest, I mean, it's not that I was rushing out to coppers every week or anything beforehand, Like socially, it's not been hugely derailing. It's just, I've missed that connection to the arts. I felt like that was the thing that suffered most.
Sure. What sort of feedback are you getting from your friends about that? Because again, from some of the NGOs that I deal with, particularly young teenage LGBT people, the levels of depression and the levels of shall we say, anxiety are through the roof, which is very disturbing, and we hope that it will soon be over.
Yeah, I can well imagine it. My sister, she's not a member of the LGBT community, but she is, she's 20, so she missed like her whole first year in college because of it. She missed so many of those formative experiences, and I can only imagine, I'm lucky I'm not in this position, but I can only imagine that being that age and being a member of any sort of minority community to not be able to, sorry, to not be able to go and experience and explore those things and engage with those communities. It must be so isolating. Like it's so horrible. I feel really, really fortunate that I'm not in that position.
Mm-hmm. Well, as we say, let's be optimistic and learn from the experience, and hopefully the worst of it is over. Your background in, certainly your academic background in theatre, you weren't, shall we say, the Sean O'Casey who sat in the garret and wrote this. You did actually have a formal education, both in, particularly in directing with the School of Acting. Um, it, is that something you recommend to people? Because a lot of people might think, oh, I'll just sit down and write a play. How important is it to have that structured education, Chris?
Um, One of the things that I sort of think about any education is that one of the most important things that you can learn is just how much you don't know. You know, so you can go into a course like that and you can think, God, sure, I'm great. I'm God's gift to theatre. Like, hooray for me. And it's only when you're there that you understand really, like, oh, look at all these things that you've never considered and such. So I think, like, really, for anyone who wants to work in theatre, yes, you should go and learn how to work in theatre.
Yeah. You went to the Gaiety School of Acting, and it's almost like everybody who's anybody in Dublin theatre, particularly young people anyway, have all gone through there or something very similar like the Lear or that. How would you rate the Gaiety course for people who are considering?
It was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I did the master's program, which is run in conjunction with the Gaiety School of Acting and UCD. And it was the most wonderful year. There was, I think, 7 people in my class, and we had practical classes in the Gaiety with a lady called Antoinette Duffy, who was fantastic. And then we had like lectures in UCD with a whole cohort of people. And the 7 of us spent like the whole year working really, really closely together, learning from each other, making work together. And it was wonderful. And now, having come out of that course, we're all still in like very, very close contact. We all support each other's work. And as well as that, it's very hard. It's such a competitive industry, and it's very easy to sort of go about feeling forlorn or browbeaten and stuff. So to have the moral support of these 7 people who are in the exact same position as you, like, it's really, really important.
Sure. And something theatre is significant for is that it's well, most of the art forms are, but particularly theatre and film, it's the collaboration. Is that something that was strengthened when you were participating in this course, Chris?
Yeah, hugely. Like, because everything that we did over the course, every like assessment and assignment, it was all very collaborative. Every piece of work we made was really in conjunction with each other, and I think it allowed us to see how important and how beneficial that is when you're making work.
Mm-hmm. Something that I know, and to a certain degree, you and I spoke about this before we came on. One of the people who were on your course and who is a great friend of this program is our Canadian friend Thalia Gonzalez Kane. Now, Thalia is a writer and she's a performer. She's also doing the publicity for this play that you're putting on, Chris. How did that come about?
But like I said, because we're all still very much in touch, and Talia is an absolute wizard when it comes to things like publicity in a way that I really am not. So yes, she's been great. She's been so helpful and so supportive. And Yeah, we missed her. We can't wait for her to come back to Ireland.
Well, that's what I've been saying to her, is that she made a huge impact when she was here, particularly as part of the Sydney Gay Theatre Festival. She put on a fabulous production, which I don't know if you saw, but if you haven't,
I did, yeah.
yeah, well worth a look. Chris, you and I, we're both Dubliners in the sense that we're city boys. We've never really lived outside the pale in that sense of the word. Whereas this play is quite the opposite in that sense. It's set in rural Ireland. How did that come about, that you suddenly decided to set it not in an alien land, but in an environment you weren't uh, intrinsically familiar with?
It inspired. It was inspired by the first time I ever drove to Dingle,
Mhm.
and I remember thinking I got down to Dingle at about 4 in the morning, and I was like, I can't believe this is so far away. And you drive through all these little towns on the way down. Once you get past Limerick, it's just little town and little town. And I remember thinking, like, God, what do the people who live here do all day? And it fascinates me. It's very, very alien to me, the idea of living somewhere quite remote. Like, I think, say you live somewhere like that and you want your kid to get violin lessons or something, where do you go? Like, you have to come back to Limerick. Like, it just seems such a different way to live your life, and it fascinates me.
Yeah. And Dingle itself, I don't want to get too sidetracked here. Dingle, and dare I say it, somewhere like Skull or Castletown Bear, they're relatively hip areas in the sense that what they like to say, blow-ins have come there, usually blow-ins from the artistic community. But I think what you're referring to is places that really aren't all that sexy, but are also quite isolated. Is that the sort of environment you had in mind, and the mindset that would come out of that?
That was definitely the sort of thing that was going through my head. And I have a lot of family from towns and villages like that. I won't name them for fear of slandering an entire village worth of people. But that is definitely the idea. But then we've gone in the play even further, and the character in the play doesn't even live in a town. He lives on a farm outside of a town. Like, he's very isolated.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to get too controversial here, Chris, but the further you go into rural Ireland, it's almost exclusively Catholic. And if you like, one of the aspects that came out of independence was the ethnic cleansing of the non-Catholics in rural Ireland. Is the play, to a certain degree, is it a look into the mindset of, if you like, Catholic Ireland, or even by a backdoor route?
I wouldn't say so. I don't want to give too much away,
Sure.
but the character in the play is gay, and the play is largely about him searching for community.
Sure.
So being gay isn't an issue for him, and that he's not having anyone shouting slurs at him on the street or anything.
Yeah.
It's just an issue in him, in that it sort of adds to the isolation that he's feeling.
Okay. Now, the reason why I ask that is because over the last, say, 6 months or so, this program, which has primarily been Dublin-centric, I've started to focus on rural Ireland. And although it's mainly towns I've been focusing on, places like Castlebar and Youghal and things like that, even somewhere like Wexford, people are finding that there's a great shortage of places just to meet up, just to have a coffee, just to connect with people. Is that something that comes across in the play, that people are, the minorities are very isolated in that sense of the word, and you first of all have to come to terms with yourself before you perhaps come to terms with your environment?
It's something. It's hugely important for people of any minority. I think that they are able to engage with their community and other members of the same minority. And the play it's definitely about that. It's about a man who can't find that community, largely because of where he is, but there's other factors in it as well, I would say.
Sure.
So yeah, that does come across for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's called 20 Minutes from Nowhere, just so we can let people know. It's set in Kerry, as you say. Well, I would hope that a positive we can take out of it is that over the last couple of months I have done a programme about Kerry Pride, so perhaps the character you're talking about, he won't be quite as alone in the real world. But as you say, the play is about it's described as a play about love, loss, and farming, and it talks about location, loneliness, and the courage to be vulnerable. It's a very challenging brief, Chris. Is that how you saw it? Or was that something you were always? This is something you wanted to put down there and put there for people to see for themselves.
The whole idea had just been going around in my head and growing and growing and growing for a long time before I ever went to write anything down. So when I did write it down, it all sort of happened very quickly. But the character in the play, he does feel very real to me, and I think anyone who has seen the play so far, they feel the same way about this man.
Yeah. Did you base it on anyone in particular, or is it perhaps a composite, or is it just based on observation?
No, yeah, I couldn't say it's based on any actual people. I think a lot of the emotions that the character deals with they're based on emotions that I would be familiar with. He's not based on me, but like a lot of it comes from how I view different situations. But he's nothing like me. He's not based on anyone in particular. He completely fictional. Yeah.
Okay. Now, of course, if I was talking to Daniel Day-Lewis, I would have found that Daniel probably spent 6 months there in a peak cap, going down cutting turf and rounding up cattle. I'm presuming you didn't do any of that, Chris.
Well, actually, so Owen O'Sullivan, the performer, Owen is really, really wonderful. He's so intelligent and so sensitive as a performer. But he did a little research trip to Kerry. He's from Kerry.
Okay.
But he did a research trip anyway. He found an Airbnb down in somewhere near Dingle, I believe, but in the middle of nowhere. And he saw this house and he was like, that's exactly how I imagined this guy's house in my head. And he went down and he stayed and he had a wonderful time. And he sent us all these photos of like the area and the locality. And I was gobsmacked. I think it was amazing. And he got talking to a lot of people while he was down there. And he found that really a lot of what we deal with in the play is very true to life for a lot of people.
Yeah, look, we've got to commend Owen for his commitment to the art. I mean, that's more than going the extra yard to for the play. It's also a good tribute to yourself as well, that it's not just something he sees as, oh, this is another piece of work. So we have to give Owen a lot of credit for going so deep into the work. Yeah, he's also, dare I say it, he's a very good-looking man. As I mentioned earlier, a touch of the Tom Cruise qualities about it, but I suspect Owen is a bit taller with a bit of luck. Not that there's anything.
He's going to love that. He'll love to hear that now.
Yeah. The other side of the coin is that you're a co-director. It's a collaborative effort with Martha Fitzgerald. What's your connection with Martha? I presume you must have some professional connection to invite her to come and help you direct this.
So Martha was in the master's program with myself and Talia. We were all in the same class, and I think I said earlier that, like, for me, the best theatre is the most collaborative theatre, you know, when you get a lot of voices into a room all working together to make something, then it becomes really, really fruitful. So very, very early on, I thought that, you know, if it's just me and an actor, it's only two people, it's not enough. So I thought I'd want someone else to work on this with me. And Martha's wonderful. She is completely, she has a completely different taste to me. We're so contradictory, but because of our experience in the Masters together, we have a wonderful shared vocabulary and we find it very, very easy to work together. So it's been a very fruitful partnership.
Yeah. And females artists tend to see similar topics or similar works from a slightly different perspective. Does Martha bring a bit, as I say, does she bring something extra that you as a male perhaps would not bring?
I don't know if there's something gendered specifically in that way. Maybe there is, and I just haven't picked up on it yet. But I would say, like, even when we're going to films or we're going to the theatre and stuff, Martha and I have, I would say, opposite taste. The things that I love, she hates, and just stuff. So there is a great balancing in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose what I was alluding to there, Chris, is that females tend to put more emphasis on relationships between characters and even character itself, whereas males tend to put more emphasis on perhaps action and hierarchy. And I'm just wondering how that might have panned out between the two co-directors.
Yeah, I think it didn't really. I suppose in that sense, in that sense, we're actually quite similar in that I think we're both more driven by emotion and character, and less by sort of hierarchy and politics and stuff, which is good. It really suits this play.
Yeah. And in Owen's case, I mean, as you say, he comes from the area. Did he suggest any changes to the dialogue for accuracy, or was this a man who was happy to take your words and deliver them accordingly?
No, he absolutely brought a lot of changes. I did my best with the Kerry dialect. I have a lot of friends from Kerry, and I've seen, you know, a lot of John B. Keane plays and all the rest of it. So I did my best, but definitely there were some slips, and Owen was able to spot them all and fix them, so it's much more accurate. There was a lot of sayings that I threw in because I thought they were right, but actually they're from Northern Ireland and they're just words that I knew from my family and stuff. They weren't from Kerry at all. So Owen was able to spot them all, and I think it's pretty authentically Kerry now, thanks to Owen's work.
Yeah. How important then, Chris, is the LGBT element to it, or is this a human story that the orientation is perhaps incidental, and it may be that an isolated heterosexual male might feel similar emotions and similar challenges?
I find that hard. I find that really hard to answer. To me, the LGBT themes in the play are not the main driving thing. They're not like a huge deal. And I would think that anyone watching it could identify with what this character goes through. However, I would say that if you ask anyone else, they'll be like, dead on, it's a gay play. And I don't know, I mean, it's been a long time coming, but we haven't actually had an audience yet. So I'm really, really interested to see how audiences ultimately engage with it. It's something I think that, you know, it's very easy for so many of us to go into a little sort of LGBT bubble and kind of miss how other people might react and respond to things as well. But He's a lovely character. He's a really, really lovely character. Owen is so sensitive in the way he's performing this piece. So I think everyone's gonna relate to it.
Okay, we won't go down into the detail too much, but I'm assuming then, unlike say a guy from maybe Finglas or Clontarf or Dalkey, that he doesn't spend a huge amount of his time during the play on Grinder.
No, he spends a moment, all right. It does appear, but yeah, I won't give too much away.
Okay, let's talk about the venue itself, Chris. It's on at the Bewleys Cafe Theatre. It's in Grafton Street. A lovely venue. I'd even go so far as to say a really nice venue for a play of this size. I've described it from experience of other plays that I've seen there as an intimate venue. What was your thoughts when they approached you? Did you think, yeah, this is the venue I'd like it to be performed at?
Yeah, I was delighted, really, really delighted. I think it's such it is a small, intimate piece, so it's going to be right at home in Bewleys, and you're able to get right up close with the audience, as well as that. The whole building is just so beautiful and iconic. Like when you walk past all those amazing Harry Clark windows to get up to the theatre. It's wonderful. And then the theatre space itself is so quirky, that it's been really wonderful exploring how we're going to use that space. It's great.
Yeah, you might be surprised to find out, Chris, that it was basically hippies who put Bewleys on the map again in about the early 70s, and we used to go in there. You'd get about 4 dowager old ladies sitting there having their tea and scones, and about 6 hippies in the basement, and that was it. You could let off a cannon and you wouldn't hit anybody in Bewley. So it's fabulous that.
And this was before. It used to not be on Grafton Street, right?
It was on Grafton Street. There was another one on Delir Street or Westmoreland Street, I think it was. But anyway, and that was even emptier. So it just goes to show you that Dublin in the 60s, and particularly what we liked was Formica tabletops and strip lighting and things like that. It was, as I say, Dublin owes a great deal of debt to hippies. So what's the situation now? It's we're starting to see venues open up post-COVID. Is it allowing full capacity in there? Because it's not got a great capacity, it's huge capacity to start with, Chris.
My understanding is that the capacity is 60 people. I think there are as far as I understand, there's no COVID limitations on the capacity. However, you will have to show your vaccine or your COVID passport when you come into the building. And you'll need to keep your mask on for the duration of the performance.
Okay.
And I would say as well that everyone should keep up to date with the Bewleys Cafe Theatre social media in case those restrictions might change, because we know that these restrictions do change.
And from an atmospheric perspective, it doesn't matter where you are in the venue. You're very, very close to the stage. You can get the energy coming from the performers.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Tell us about this, Chris. The previews are going to be starting on Monday the 1st and Tuesday the 2nd of November. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. At 1 p.m.
Okay, and how long is the run for?
It's running for 3 weeks, so it's on until the 20th of November, and it's on Monday to Saturday.
So it's Monday, so it'll be on every day. So it'll be lovely for somebody who, people who might be in an office and want a bit of something different during their lunch break to go down there and see that.
Absolutely, and the show is about 50 minutes long, so it runs from 1 o'clock until about 1:50. And then if you want, you can go downstairs into Bewleys and have your lunch.
Indeed. So you're not allowed to take your lunch upstairs with you. Am I correct in thinking that?
That's my understanding at the moment. But again, as I say, it might all change between now and the end of the run. So just keep up to speed on our social media.
Yeah, well, for somebody who was queuing up to get into Bewleys last week just to have a cup of coffee and a sandwich, we got to the top of the queue and I was told, oh, you're going to be waiting about 20 minutes. So I'm going to suggest perhaps people wanting to go and see the play should turn up 15, 20 minutes early because they're not going to let everybody in at once.
Absolutely. I keep having to queue to get into the building as well to show my passport at the top. And it takes a bit of time. So I'd suggest as well pre-booking tickets on bewleyscafetheatre.com. And then all you have to do when you come in is show your passport at the door.
Yeah. And the important element is what's the cost of the tickets, Chris? Because I gather there's a sliding scale of ticket prices. Tell us about that.
So tickets are between 10 and 15 euro, and then there's a small booking fee on top of that as well. And I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but it's a different price depending on what day of the week you go.
Okay, well the information I've got here is Monday and Tuesday is 10 euros, Wednesday, Thursday 12, and I think Friday, Saturday, probably because they're going to be more popular, will be 15 euros as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although this is being performed in Dublin, Chris, it's got very much what I would call it's got rural attraction. Have you any plans to take this outside the Pale?
We absolutely have. We don't have any dates to announce yet, but we have been talking to some other venues. And we're being supported by Bewleys in that. So hopefully after we do the 3 weeks here, we'll go around the country with it for a little bit as well. And it'll be very interesting to see how audiences outside of Dublin connect with the play and the character.
Yeah, well, an obvious location to take it to is its inspirational home, and that's Dingle.
Yeah, Owen is from, I think, Castle Island is the name of the town, and there is a theatre there, so he's mad looking for us to go there as well.
Well, rightly so. I mean, I'm sure they would love to welcome their favourite son back, or a favourite son back to the area as well. And last but by no means least, Chris, we're hoping that next year that this we will have the return of the Dublin Gay Theatre Festival. Have you any plans to either show this or to put work into that as well? To submit work?
I've no plans at the moment, but this play was originally supposed to be in the Gay Theatre Festival in May of 2020 before everything stopped. So hopefully I'll be back in the Gay Theatre Festival with a show at some point in the future.
Okay, and maybe even Thalia might come back and do yet another play as well. Who can tell? Yeah,
we can only hope.
We can only hope. Chris, you've been incredibly generous with your time, despite all my technical failures. The play is called 20 Minutes from Nowhere, a play about love, loss and farming. We're going to give it a huge recommendation, and we hope it's a terrific success down there in Bewleys in Grafton Street. So, Chris Kelly, it's been a delight to have you as our guest today.
Thank you so much, Mick.
Friends with Dorothy, fighting for your civil rights. Out on the cruel streets tonight. For Sylvia and Marcia, life was harder than you'll ever know. Sylvie placed a star where others just threw a stone.